hold space. Pathaye Namo Namaha. Jai Ganesha Gananatha Dayaniti Sakala Vigna Karadura Hamari. Jai Ganesha Gananatha Dayaniti Sakala Vigna Karadura Hamari.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Welcome to our weekly online satsang. If you're wondering, satsang is a Sanskrit word that means community of truth. You could have just call it spiritual community, which is a lot humbler, I think. But essentially, wherever you have two or more people that join together who are on the path of awakening, sharing their journey, sharing their presence, their consciousness, their energy with one another, you have a satsang. And it's a very important part of the spiritual path of awakening to join together with others in community that are also awakening. And so hopefully everyone who's listening or watching has a local community that you resonate with, that you can join together with them in meditation, in prayer, in fellowship, in sharing your insights, your challenges, and being able to give each other insight and strength. Our presence that we experience within and all around us as we awaken is greatly intensified when we join together with others that are experiencing the same thing. And it's extremely contagious, as it turns out. It's what the world needs. The world needs to awaken from the illusion of separate existence. I said illusion, but I could say delusion. It's a delusion that humanity's been stuck in for thousands and thousands of years. The feeling of separate existence. And all of that encapsulated in a protective layer we call ego. And that has given birth to a global civilization that is quite ill, actually, and suffering, rooted in competition, conflict, and war. That needs to flip around to a new global civilization rooted in cooperation, not competition, and harmony, not conflict, and peace, not war. And the way that happens, well, humanity's been trying to do it. I have to give us this much credit. There have been a lot of us that have tried for many thousands of years through religious and spiritual movements, philosophical movements, political movements, all kinds of movements, but none of it actually has worked. They've been noble efforts, but they've been efforts of the mind to fix something that is beyond the mind's ability to even comprehend, much less change. The answer is the flowering of the heart in higher consciousness, the awakening and transformation of the human spirit in oneness with the divine source, in oneness with all that exists. That awakening needs to happen on a global level. It's just wonderful that you and I are on that path of awakening. Because, as I said, it's contagious as we awaken more and more deeply. Ripples are going out into the collective consciousness. Having been at this now for over 50 years in this present lifetime, as a spiritual teacher that long, I've seen the difficulties that people face in the path of awakening. It's been quite a roller coaster with many roadblocks along the way. But as the years have gone by, from the 1960s when my journey really began, to the present, it's gotten easier and easier and easier for people to undergo the process of awakening and transformation. I believe that's because there are so many more of us than there were, say, in 1967. There are untold millions of people who have already experienced at least some level of awakening on this planet. And so it gets easier. When there was only maybe one awakened person at a time, Jesus Christ, the world could go after him to try to snuff that light. And it's actually an unconscious, knee-jerk reaction in the human collective consciousness that when a way shower, a light giver appears and begins to shine so much light on our condition and challenge us and call us to awaken and to evolve and transform, there's something in humanity that doesn't like change. It doesn't appreciate that. And so there's always been something that rose up to assail those people. It happened to Buddha. In his old age, he died of poisoning. Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. We could go down the list of great saints and light showers, beings that came into this world to help us transform ourselves in the world, who were removed after a time. But each one of them left a mark that is indelible. I mean, Buddha will never be forgotten, and his teachings on awakening and meditation have changed things on this planet. The teachings of Christ, well, even if you don't believe he actually existed, which I do, whatever that was, the teaching of unconditional love and forgiveness and selfless service and surrender from the heart to the Almighty has changed the world. It introduced concepts like grace. Grace. I know, really? Is that new? Well, a couple thousand years old, but people used to think that you earned your way into God's favor, that by keeping rules and regulations or following some scientific system like yoga or Nuigong in China, and the different cultures have had very precise teachings that if you do these things a certain way and exercise these formulas, it will produce awakening, enlightenment. Well, they all have some benefit, but awakening is a gift of grace. And the flowering of the heart is grace. It's a gift of unconditional love from the source of the universe that we are able to experience more and more of the less we think we're doing it. The less we're trying to do it ourselves through some ego-driven effort using scientific spiritual principles and all of that. It still goes on today, but more and more. You walk into a yoga class, which years ago would have talked a lot about karma. You will reap what you sow, and many times over. So sow seeds of good karma, and that will lead to personal benefit, wholeness, and transformation. Now, in many yoga processes I've been involved in, the teachers talk about grace. Grace, and the idea that the divine is unconditional love. That was a game changer when Christ came along, because people in the Middle East thought the divine was a brutal warlord. If you kept his laws, he would conquer your enemies for you and give you their fortunes, their families, their wives, and their children, which is, Jesus was like, no, God's not like that. God's like this: mercy, gentleness, forgiveness, healing, nurturance. That was a real game changer on planet Earth when it came to spirituality. So even though his ministry, his physical ministry, lasted about 3 years, the world's never gotten over it, never will. Because
we're still trying to figure it out.
Poor us. But his teachings and his presence introduced so much more than just this. But if it was just that, spiritual transformation is not a matter of your good works, but of a gift of grace freely received in humility. And that the nature of the divine is not a stern judge of karma and sowing and reaping, but a loving, totally accepting presence of unconditional love. So those concepts have become pervasive, and I'm not sure that a lot of us involved in spirituality realize how much that teacher had to do with it. And of course, we're moving into we're in what in Christian circles is called the Advent season, the days leading up to the celebration of the birth of Christ. And so I've been meditating on all these things. But there have been so many great spiritual teachers, and now you and I and all of us who are awakening are the spiritual teachers of our time. We might not be as great as the Buddha or the Christ, per se, or Krishna, but all together, it was actually Saint Bernard of Clairvaux who said the second coming of Christ is not the physical return of Christ to earth. It is Christ being manifested in and through the hearts of those that are connected with him. And actually, Paramahansa Yogananda, in writing about the life and teachings of Christ, said the same thing. He said that the second coming of Christ is a generation that is coming into the world that are going to collectively emerge into Christ consciousness. Now, Yogananda wrote that before it happened, because I think he passed away in, 54 or something. I mean, it was before the huge spiritual movement of the 60s that has carried on into our time. He saw that. other great teachers. I could go on naming the names of Indian seers and of our day. One in India who is considered by many to be an avatar, in the early days of his teaching said, no, I'm not an avatar. We are the avatar. We are part of a generation when the avataric consciousness is descending into a whole generation of people simultaneously and expressing through them. Because there is no individual separate being. We are all 8 billion quirky manifestations of one being, of one consciousness, of one universal love. And when we awaken and the blinders fall from our eyes, we discover that we are each other, that we're all each other, that we're one being. And so that any consciousness that comes into this world to transform it now is expressing through us, not just a single individual. That's one of the things I really love about the Flowering Heart Blessing, which incidentally we are sharing right now and will continue to transmit and flow out to you through the remainder of the satsang. It's a beautiful form of blessing. Blessing. If you are familiar with the Indian tradition, they call it Diksha, but in English, it simply means blessing. And there's so many beautiful forms of blessing on the planet now. Just so from the Christian gifts of the Holy Spirit and the laying on of hands for healing and impartation of spiritual gifts and empowerment, to Reiki, to Fawa of the Tibetan tradition, I could just go on and on and on. And I've experienced many of these different forms of blessing and been a vehicle for them. And so has Suzanne over the years. And about, a little more than 7 years ago, the Divine took us on a shift in our path and said, okay, start to share this blessing with people. And we called it, and I think the Divine inspired us to call it the Flowering Heart Blessing. And said, it's a gift of grace. Don't charge people for it. How do they get initiated? They just receive it. And anyone who receives this blessing, that means you here tonight, if you connect with the presence and the energy that you experience, you can invite the Divine to use you as an instrument of grace for the Flowering Heart Blessing to flow through you. And you could begin right now. Everybody who's here with us tonight, just ask the Divine to let it flow through you to all the people that are watching this satsang, participating in it tonight, and those who will in the future days, weeks, months, years might view this, will experience this presence and energy because it is a transmission of spirit, of awakened divine enlightened spirit. And spirit knows no separation in time or space. It's always now and it's always here. So, but the Divine showed us many things about this and said this blessing, the Flowering Heart Blessing, is sourced in me, in the Divine source itself. And it doesn't come through, it isn't filtered through the prism of an avatar or a saint or a master or a spiritual teacher or any spiritual organization or hierarchy. It's directly from the Divine to the one who opens to receive it. And its purpose is awakening, but awakening from the inside out. It seems like so many of the blessings I received over the years, which did have much benefit for me, were being transmitted from the outside to me. Shaktipat from a great, Siddha yogi, Nuigong Jiliao from an awakened Taoist master, the Tibetan blessings, all these blessings, and even the gift of the Holy Spirit. When I experienced that immersion in the power of the Holy Spirit was through the agency of someone praying for me and laying. Now you might say, but we lay our hands on people too. We do. But we are very clear to let people know that what the purpose of the blessing is to awaken you to the divine who dwells in you already at the center of your being, as the center of your being, as your true sacred self. Your true sacred self is already enlightened. Yep, it's already enlightened and already in oneness with all that is. So, what's needed is for us to go within into the depths of our spiritual heart and to discover that light that is within each and every one of us at the center of our being. And once we make contact, and the Flowering Heart blessing makes that connection, then it just begins to flower from the inside out. I like to say it's supernovas, actually. The light at the center illuminates the spiritual layers of our being, and then the soulish layers of our being, which includes mind, emotions, will, programming, and all of that. And then the physical layers of our being, transforming each, but from the inside out, so we don't make the mistake of becoming overly dependent on something or some place or someone outside of ourselves as the source. And I've had many spiritual teachers saying, I can do this for you. I can give you this, I can awaken you. And maybe in fact there have been some great beings who have been able to do that, but more often I've been watching through my whole life such promises that when people make them, no matter how beautiful and exalted they are, it just doesn't fully happen. When it happens, it's, well, a great Zen master that's alive today says it's an accident, which is another way of saying it's grace. There's nothing you or anyone else can do to make it happen. But the same Zen master said it's just that those who are involved in a consistent, effective spiritual practice, they're accident prone. Which means the divine is more likely to give the gift of awakening to those that are fervently, sincerely seeking it and involving themselves in consistent, right spiritual practice and right effort. So, the Flowering Heart blessing, right from the beginning, zeroes in on the heart of the journey, which is to wake up that the outer world is a mirror, a reflection of the inner world. So if you saw light in a guru's face, or the face of a saint, or an expression of the divine out there, it was a mirror, as the whole outer world is a mirror, reflecting to you what is inside of you. And once you get that, and instead of projecting out there all the time, our inner vision turns around and peers into the center. Awakening doesn't happen. Awakening is discovered. It's already there. It's uncovered. And that's the way this blessing works and the way it's presented from the beginning. And you can go to our website, and there's a guided meditation for initiation if you think you need more when this is all over. But you can lay your hands on someone with their consent. And what do? Well, you just inwardly ask the divine to give them the Flowering Heart blessing, and then just get out of the way and feel what happens. It's not something that we do. It's not something that Suzanne and I do. It's the divine that's doing it, which really gets us out of the way. But you have to have their informed consent. This is going to change them. It's going to cause an awakening process to begin that just, as you know already, turns everything on its head. And it's going to transform them, which most people these days would really like, I think, because they intuit this is release from suffering. This is what needs to happen. At a distance, though, in prayer and meditation, you can just hold someone in your heart and ask the divine to flow the Flowering Heart blessing through your intentions to them. And it can be equally or even more powerful than when you actually put your hands on them. Wow, I think I've said enough. Oh no. I haven't said enough, or I said too much, or what was that song? I'm losing my religion. A lot of people are losing their religion and finding genuine spirituality. And they can work together, which is nice when they do. But, I'm not. The only thing I can think of in the way of news is coming up in less than 2 weeks, actually, our interfaith communion with the cosmic Christ. Interfaith, everyone of any faith or no faith is welcome, focusing on the celebration of the cosmic Christ, which is the Paramatma, or the God within everything, not exclusively on the historical Jesus of Nazareth, who's understood by Christians to be the human incarnation, but interfaith communion with the cosmic Christ. We generally do it on the last Sunday morning of each month, but the last Sunday this month will be Christmas itself. So not a good time to have a service or a webcast. So we're doing it the Sunday before, and that will be the 18th of December at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us. If you can't be with us here physically, and you're welcome to come to Flowering Heart Center. That would just be great. But if you can't, you can tune in online, and if you can't do that, the recording will be there. And we hold a special intention for those that are participating at a distance, that if you provide maybe a nice sacred space, you could light a candle or some incense, but mainly if you have some bread, flat bread is best, and some grape juice or wine, then we hold the intention that will be consecrated and blessed for you, and you'll share in the same sacramental presence that we're sharing here. But if you have any attraction to the path of the heart, to Christ consciousness, I encourage you to tune in. In fact, all the recordings are up there on Facebook Live and Vimeo of these services that we've been doing once a month for years now. And that's all the news I got. Okay, so we open it up even more to questions and answers and insights you might have to share, problems you might be facing in your personal spiritual journey, or just musings, just things areas of spirituality, the spiritual journey that you'd like more light, clarity, understanding about. If you will enter those questions or comments into the chat on Facebook Live or Vimeo, we'll see it and we'll respond, and we'll try to answer even the most difficult questions. We like them. And then later on in a little bit, we'll be, and the blessing is flowing to you right now, so you can just soak it up and drink it in. But we'll be sending the blessing in a powerful way by intention for the personal needs that you've brought with you here tonight, and concluding with the open eye light meditation at the end. Okay. So, Everett writes, the power of oneness here in Virginia Beach has changed my understanding of what we are truly meant to live by and share with all that is. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Been to Virginia Beach, visited Virginia Beach in a couple of different contexts. We used to go present processes that were affiliated with the oneness movement that originated in the Oneness University in India. And I think when I first came to Virginia Beach was that, but we've been back since the shift I talked about, and actually presented there about the Flowering Heart Blessing and some of our more recent insights over the last 7 years. So thank you for sharing. And thank you, John, who says, great introduction. We have our moments, don't we, John? Yeah, by grace. Yep. So if you have any questions, and since not everyone has posted anything in the chat, if you would give us a like or a love on Facebook, then your name will show at the end, and Suzanne and I can go and see who dropped in. And I watch all during the week, because many times more people watch these later tonight or tomorrow between now and next Monday because of conflicts in their schedule or time zone. We have people who join us from around the world, and you know, if you happen to be in China or Japan or Australia, it's a whole different time of day. So we have people joining us from other continents all over the world, different time zones, for whom it's much more practical to do it at another time, and we think that's just perfect. The only thing you can't do is enter a question in the chat. But you can always email us anyway. Michael@floweringheart.org, or Suzanne with a Z at floweringheart.org. And encourage you to do that, you know, actually. And you can send in questions during the week. If you send them in advance, it gives us time to meditate on them. Although probably the answers are just as well or better when we don't have time to think about them at all. And it's just inspiration of the Spirit. So yeah, and if you're at Vimeo, you got to just say something on the chat and say, hi, I'm here. But we do check those things out, and so glad to have you with us.
Is that a question?
Nope. Oh yeah, Everett writes, I met with you both in a group, a personal session a few years ago, and you may remember me as Easy. Yeah, Easy Rider. I get it. That's good. Yeah. Beautiful. Who? Yeah, okay, I won't go down that path right now, but yeah, well, good to see you again. Glad you could be with us. So, any questions about the spiritual journey? I mean, this is certainly a challenging time we're in right now. I know. And to balance our whatever, unless you're lucky enough to just be completely off the grid and pull the plug on any telecommunications or internet, then you're probably not even with us here tonight. But to the degree that we've got, you know, one toe in the waters of the world and the rest of us immersed in the spiritual journey, these are challenging times, to be sure. So.
What?
So, Julia writes, this amazing practice of meditation has taught me that we can change our karma to dharma for good causes. Not taught. Yes, I made that switch in my mind when I was reading. So this amazing practice of meditation has taught me that we can change our karma to dharma for good causes. Yeah, absolutely. So what's the difference between karma and dharma? Anyone? Karma, you want to talk about it?
No, go ahead.
Karma is what happens to us as a result of cause and effect, sowing and reaping. And there's not much you can do about it when it's set in motion. There's good karma and there's not good karma. In Sanskrit, good karma is called sat karma. And that is good deeds, good actions, good seeds sown. And that stuff, we used to look at it sort of as spiritual bank account. And when the more good you put out there, that's going to come back to you. Now that's the law of karma, but it's also the law of sowing and reaping in the Bible. It's right there in the very beginning of Genesis, is whatsoever a person sows, that shall they reap. The law of karma puts it more succinctly. You will reap it, and many times over. So we set things in motion, which are very good. And bad karma is called dushkarma, and a lot of us thought until I learned better, that if you have a lot of bad karma, a lot of bad seeds, a lot of bad deeds, a lot of bad actions that are coming back to you, that the way to fix it is do good deeds, do good works. That's like thinking you can redeem yourself through your own good works. And that's just as faulty a notion in the Hindu tradition as it is in the Christian tradition. Because, well, the way it was explained to us in India is good karma, sat karma, is one bank account, douche karma, dark karma is a separate bank account. So yeah, get as much good karma as you can, but if you have a lot of negative seed in this other account, you can't overcome that just by doing good deeds. It may help balance it out a bit, but it won't. You still will be reaping the result of that negative action. That said, it can be transformed. And meditation could be one of the keys to transforming negative karma to dharma. Now, before I explain that, dharma is what you're here for. Dharma is your life purpose. It's your life purpose unfolding. It's your divine mission, if you will. And there are many levels to that. There's the dharma, the big picture, but we each have our own dharma, our own sort of purpose, our mission for this life in a positive sense. And so yes, we would like to transform negative karma so that we can be free to express and move forward in our dharma, our God-given purpose and mission. So how do you do that? Well, it's not as simple as just meditation. This meditation, perhaps, flowering heart-induced meditation. There are so many different kinds of meditation, but one of the things I learned in the last 15 or 20 years, is that for me, the most meaningful meditation is spontaneous. It's not what I'm trying to produce through mantras or breath work or special asanas, body postures, and strong intention of will. I mean, the word meditation in Sanskrit is dhyana, which means concentration. But real meditation is much more than concentration of mental effort. It is dissolution, transcendence, and that's samadhi. And that is grace. And it can happen spontaneously. It can just happen when you're walking down the street. It can happen when you're, sitting in the woods. It can happen, you just sit, close your eyes, and don't do anything. Just open to the presence, and you're being meditated by the divine presence itself. That's really cool. Okay, back to karma. How do you deal with the negative karma account? It's very simple. Karma is a very strict teacher. But what karma is waiting for you to do is face it. Karma wants us to face the negative, hurtful, harmful seeds that we have sown in this world, in this life. And to see the hurt that it has caused others and caused the world. And not only see it, but feel it. When you see the effect of being unkind or insensitive, when we see the result of that in the way that it has hurt others, in the way that it has hurt the world, and we feel it, well, it probably will make you want to cry. But karma is at that moment rejoicing because you have finally embraced the experience of the pain you've caused others. And that's the way out of karma. When we experience the pain that we've inflicted on others, it frees them from the pain that they're carrying on their backs, the burden. And it frees us, and karma releases us. Karma is a very strict teacher, but a very merciful and generous teacher when we learn our lesson. So if meditation helps us to face the suppressed material that we're running from and hiding from, wonderful. It could be a spontaneous life review, or even a life review that you do on purpose, where you go back through your whole life from as far back as you can remember and let yourself look at the stuff that hurts. I don't mean where people hurt you so much, but where we were the agency of hurt. And that will release us from, and the problem is we ask too soon. We ask to be released from our karma. In India, Gayatri is an aspect of the divine that dissolves karma. In the Christian tradition, of course, Christ does that. But we ask for release before we really get the lesson, before we face it and embrace the harm that we've caused. And then it's time to ask, okay, I've embraced it. Help! And that's when the divine says, yes, and dissolves all of that darkness holding us back. What about illness? That's too big a question. What about illness? Can illness be the result of karma? Sure. In fact, it totally is. It's we're designed to live in divine health till the moment this life is finished and we look up with bliss and release our last breath and fly into the light. That's the way it could be. But I don't want anyone to think I'm sick because I did bad things or I have bad karma. It's just this world is full of negative forces that humans are responsible for. How do we heal? That's a whole course. That's like a whole course. There's so many modes of healing. Go ahead.
Part of the experience of the flowering of the heart is we begin to be more gentle with ourselves because we see that we couldn't have made the decisions that we made in any moment in any other way in our current state of consciousness. So we begin to heal that and heal self-judgment and criticism and doubt and hatred. And when that begins to heal, we are more open and receptive to the love of the divine, the unconditional love. And when you start to feel that, we get more and more aware of where we're blocking receiving that divine grace because of our thoughts and our programs and our charges and everything we've been through in life. But when our eyes are opened more and more and more, then we begin to have compassion for people that are acting in the way that we used to act. So we're seeing our karmic tendencies being healed and transformed in a way that we will respond with compassion and unconditional love because we've already been through it. But we just have to be gentle and patient with ourselves and keep returning to grace and the divine within ourselves and ask for more and more awareness, more and more light, more and more, unveiling of where we could still be kinder and be more compassionate.
There's a lot to say about physical healing, which is I know what you're asking about, and Suzanne's showing how physical healing is rooted in spiritual transformation. That said, the multitudes that Christ healed by a pure gift of grace,
right,
they weren't very evolved per se. They're just, what's to see there? He said, if you see what I'm doing, what I'm like, you're seeing what God is like. He's not a brutal judge. She's very sweet and healing. And okay, so the first thing to get is that it is the will and intention of the divine to release you from suffering and to bring about wholeness in your life, spirit, soul, and body. The problem is, as Suzanne was pointing out, it's not the divine giving us the healing grace, it's our inability to receive it. And so there are all kinds of ways we grow in openness and trust and the ability to welcome the healing graces, which work in our spirits, our souls, our bodies, our relationships, our connections with the world. And so, but Julia goes on to ask, what about environmental components? Our world is very toxic. Well, that is true. So a lot of what we deal with is a toxicity that we didn't create. I mean, if you think about, well, collectively, but not individually, and probably none of us here tonight had any direct role in creating the COVID pandemic. But it is the result of imbalances, disharmonies between humanity and nature. And so we want to correct our relationship with nature. We need to do that collectively. We can begin to do that individually within our own lives. But the master of my youth, there was a great Taoist awakened sage, said, though a number of Taoist yogis, just like Indian yogis, have achieved what's called physical immortality, the transformation of their physical bodies into a state of energy, where they could live like 1,000 years, and they were called immortals. He said it's very, very difficult to achieve that in today's world, and very few people do it because our world is so toxic. He said the toxicity goes beyond the chemicals, which are obvious. And he said that the sages that attained yogic immortality withdrew from civilization, usually lived high in the Himalayas or in the sacred mountains of China. They'd they drink the dew from the plants and eat living plant material and lived a very pure life. But he said it isn't just that problem. He said those of us who live in metropolitan civilization are being bombarded with toxins. But he said it's the mental toxicity. We're immersed in this collective consciousness of fear and strife and struggle and all of that, where it does affect us. So I just want to cut through it all because I know we need to move on. But back to the Christ. He said, if your eye is single, and he meant set with singleness on the divine source, which is, I think, the core role of meditation. Concentrate is to bring our spirit being to where it is completely focused on the light. If your eye is single, your body will be filled with light. And if your body is filled with light, there's no room for dis-ease, even if you are in the most toxic situation. I mean, they tried to poison John the Beloved, who's the Gospel of John, very close to Jesus. He's the only one of the 12 direct disciples that wasn't martyred, except for Judas, who took his own life. But they tried to poison him, and the poison couldn't kill him. They tried to boil John in oil. That's a pretty toxic environment, and nothing could kill him, because his eye was so single on the divine that death had nowhere to enter. When it was his time, he went. So that's all I have to say, and we got to move on. That's all I have to say. So, but the work of getting your eye single is a whole lot of the spiritual journey right there, and just summed up in one tiny phrase. And Andrea says, this has been so helpful and beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. This doesn't happen if there aren't receptive, open spirits to receive it, which is why it's so beautiful, satsang and spiritual, and being able to be a spiritual teacher. It's the divine filling and speaking to receptive hearts, So thank you, all of you, for being here and for opening the door for the light to flow. So now please close your eyes. Anything more?
Nope.
Okay. Close your eyes, if you would, and invoke the presence in your heart. Invite divine grace to flood you, as we invite the divine to pour out the flowering heart blessing to you in a very powerful way. this would be the time to just receive deeply. Close your eyes and just drink in the presence and the flowering heart blessing. Because the presence knows what you need even better than you do and before you do. And the divine is pure, unconditional love, and it's all powerful, all knowing, all wise, pouring out to you grace. It's okay to ask, but the divine already knows. So open up and receive the blessing of grace to release you, to awaken you in your spirit, to wash through your mind of unclear thoughts and programming, emotional charges, all of that soulish realm of the mind. Let it be washed clean, restructured in harmony, in unity, in oneness with the divine plan. Receive into your body the healing power of the presence to make you whole. If you have troubled relationships, receive the presence to bring healing and help. To all of your relationships and connections with the world, just let go and drink in the blessing of the divine presence. Like to ask you, with your eyes still closed, imagine or visualize us all sitting in a circle, a blessing circle, and lift up your hands with your palms open, facing forward. Let us invite the divine to flow through you and all of us. Invite the divine to pour the blessing through you to all the others in the circle, knowing that it's flowing through them back to you. Relax your hands and put them down. And when you're ready, open your eyes and begin to make direct eye contact with Suzanne and or me, either one of us, both of us. Just keep looking at least one of our eyes as we dive into the light meditation. Suzanne and I are flooded in this meditation with oceans of divine grace and love and light, and it flows through every pore of our being to you, but especially through our eyes, which mystics have called the doorways of the soul. As you keep looking, the light streams through our eyes, into your eyes, deep into your spiritual heart, causing the light and flames of divine love and awakening to meditating as long as it feels good to you. And or lie down in Shavasana. Find a place to lie down nearby. Lie on your back with your eyes closed. Your arms loosely at your sides with your palms open, turned upward. And just let yourself dissolve in the presence in gratitude. We love you so much.
Much love, light, and blessings.
Until we meet next time, know that the divine within us beholds the divine in you. And we bow to you. Namaste.